What are ethics? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John, and today we're going to discuss ethics. What are ethics? Ethics are a system of moral beliefs. Sounds simple, right? And what are morals? Morals are a determination or a characterization of human behaviors as either good or bad, right? Subject of debate and discussion and philosophy since time immemorial. So ethics. Almost all systems of thought regarding human behavior at some point, either intentionally or unintentionally, delve into ethics because they either become a system of moral beliefs or from the outset they were attempting to define human behavior through describing them as a system of moral beliefs and behaviors. So almost any analysis of the human condition in terms of behavior and acceptableness becomes a discussion of ethics. Now in this particular video, we're just going to keep ethics to sort of a general level. In later times, we'll go into very, specifics and specific cases as we try to build these things out. And I'll point out some of them here, but that's not the point of today's. Today's the overarching view of ethics as a system of beliefs, of moral beliefs. Now, once we approach systems of belief knowing that ethics is a subset lens of being able to look at different systems of belief that regard and try to guide morality in people, we can easily scan across all the different systems of belief and start to see which ones are deliberately engaging in ethics, which ones sort of just organically evolve into ethics. And, a lot of them, they don't really care. They're just more systems of existential analysis, right? For instance, when we talk about ontology or etymology, right? Like when we're trying to find the source of things, systems of belief that deal with existential analysis, things that are just trying to find out how logical sequencing of reality itself, how wisdom is gleaned, sort of just analysis of the more mechanical aspects of life. Those tend to fall outside the purview of ethics. Those actually start to fall into the realm of just science, because those are repetitive attempts to try to find out, hey, how does life work? How does sort of Lego block together? But when we start to shift the gaze into different areas of life, it becomes quickly apparent that so many systems are really dealing with systems of morals. Religion is by far the easiest one to see that at play. It doesn't matter the religion doesn't really matter. It's an ecumenical attempt combined with other factors, right? So we'll take it at the base level of, it doesn't matter if it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, fill in the blank, right? It doesn't matter, even like Satanism. It doesn't matter what religion you choose to put under the lens of the philosophical analysis of ethics. You'll very quickly see that if religion is a car, when you look under the hood for the engine of any religion is ethics. And when you look at religion, whoever the prophet is that is presenting you with ethics, they're essentially, you know, not to be blasphemous, but they're essentially the salesperson for the ethics that they're presenting. They're saying, hey, this is the life I lived, whether it's like, you know, Yeshua, aka Jesus, Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha, Muhammad, L. Ron Hubbard. It's like, it doesn't matter. Whoever the particular prophet is, be they Messiah or not, what they're really saying is, check out my life. If you like what you're seeing, like and subscribe to my system of ethics. And that system of ethics can be the Bible, the Quran, the Buddhist teachings, it can be Confucius's teachings, it can be the Tao, it can be Tom Cruise's film catalog. It doesn't really matter. Because what they're really saying is, hey, here are guidance for living a moral life, a life that we are saying is a good life. And we're sending up our life as an example to get you interested into how I got there. Here's the ethics. Here's the system of morality that I followed that got me to this particular point in life, which may, at that level, they're saying it has some spiritual value to you, that's outside of this. But ethics at a point, we'll talk about the aim of the ethics is to achieve a certain level of repeatable good characteristics, it seems. Now, ethics itself is just the system of it, right? Those systems attempt to guide the person into making good decisions while also being aware that there are bad decisions to be made. And I think that's important in the discussion of ethics. It's not a system that comes in and is one-sided. It's actually a very, very comprehensive analysis of human behavior. Especially from the philosophical level, since we're attempting not to be ideologues in terms of only having one system of belief in mind while we do this sort of analysis. We can have all of the holy books, all of the psychological books, even philosophers. Like, of course, so many philosophers' only area of interest is ethics. Like, I mean, Immanuel Kant did everything, but he's chiefly known for ethics, essentially, because he introduced the idea that, like, oh, well, your intention, like, you know, some systems of ethics, they can deal with the superficial level of things, like don't do physical violence to other people or animals or things, or like, you know, don't, you know, on the superficial level of ethics of obvious disharmonies, non-utilitarian actions. You know, many ethics try to make a scientific attempt to quantify good behavior with theories of group utility versus the individual, and the individual versus the group utility. And, you know, do ethics, are they only applicable to the individual, or are they applicable to the group? Are they to both? Is the relationship between two itself up for analysis? Are the fruits of ethics the collective ethics or the individual ethics? Like, does one outweigh the other? And those things, we'll get into those in other videos. Right now, because this is the overview of ethics itself, and all of those subsets are within the higher vision of ethics. And in our position as philosophers, we have access to analyze and do differential analysis on all ethics. It doesn't matter if they're in the religious realm, it doesn't matter if they're in the secular realm, it doesn't matter where they arise. And there are so many different versions, because really influence and leadership over humans arising from within the human species is extremely high correlation between the leadership and the idea that they have ethics that should be adapted by the society for higher efficacy of the society at large. That's generally the idea for leadership in humanity, because that's what resonates in us, is the idea that inside of a person there's a yearning, a sort of internal moral compass that wants to point us towards good behavior. Once again, that's, we'll get into that later. So ethics comes together as a comprehensive set of guidance for people to follow to make them a good person. That's kind of the overall idea, and it's something that you can hold up people to, and you can have a playbook to, and you go, hey, buddy, you're not acting good, right? That's the basis of all court systems. Court systems, supposedly, in the real world, there's different courts for different things, but the initial ideal version of a court system is essentially to have a neutral space for analysis of human behaviors and to determine whether someone has been aggrieved or not, right? If bad behavior has taken place or if good behavior. And the overall idea of a court system in general, or a legislative process in general in human society, is to act as the governing arm's version of ethics. To have an unbiased, non-religious, non-individually controlled institution that people can know as a bedrock for ethics, or at least an attempt at a bedrock for ethics, so that somewhere in their mind they can go around and know that if something bad happens to them, they have some place to have it redressed, right? They can go before somebody who's presumed to be wise in the ways of ethics and morality, and in accordance with local codified rules on the books called laws. They can have their case weighed on a balancing scale, essentially, of morality, even though, they don't always want to say that, but essentially. And then have it determine one way or the other that, yeah, you're not going crazy, you were wronged, and here's some sort of justice, right? So ethics, they're exceptionally important as an engine for human cohesiveness. And it's almost always the case that when ethics, whatever institution ethics are in, whether it's the legal system, religious beliefs, ethics within highly powerful institutions, whether they be governments or economic institutions or anywhere across the board. Medical facilities, anything you can think of, any place that has a lot of power, especially public power. Boardrooms at powerful corporations, the SEC at Wall Street, war rooms around the world. Any place that has a disproportionate amount of power, ethics are supremely important to be in mind and in proper functioning order in those institutions. And there's extremely high correlation between ethical failures in powerful nodes of systems of society and the downfalls of those societies. Because presumably societies only exist to serve the moral needs of the society it's in, so that therefore then they can go into the material world with a good conscience and be all productive and have high GDPs and raise their families and have good communities. But it's all built on the idea that ethics are established, and ethics can vary. Now that doesn't, a lot of people think, well, ethical systems can vary and still be effective, and then they try to say, well, morality is relative and stuff. We'll get into morality in a different discussion. It's a whole different thing. But the ethics, they vary region to region. They vary by those adherents or who it's populated by. But it doesn't mean that the calibration of the ethics is much different or different at all. You can take different routes to summit Everest. And a system of ethics, it does need to elevate people to a certain level, agreed upon level, for it to be considered a system of morality, for it to be ethics. Now, interestingly, I'm talking about in a way where obviously I think there's an innate ascension drive to make a person better. The system of the ethics would be a system that's attempting to encourage positive behavior, good behavior. However, there are ethics like Satanists who they have an inverted sense of good and bad, and they take a much different approach to what ethics means. And that's fun, because as we move forward with these discussions, we'll be able to see that the analysis of ethics is only complete when you can account for varying approaches to good and bad, and how their systems evolve in terms of what they consider moral, right? Because if you can come up with a bunch of morality that is defined by trying to positively evolve people, and then you can also come up with a set of morality, if you want, whose chief aim is to encourage bad behavior. And then you can codify that and call it ethics. And then your ethics, you would have a system that's promoting bad behavior and still call it ethics. You know, and in some of those cases they'll do that and then turn around and try to tell you, they'll falsely advertise it as, oh, well, it's ethics. So, you know, ethics are always good. Well, if you built it right, if you built it on good morality, good ethical precepts, and, you know, but of course with like Satanists or whatever, that would be on brand, that they would build a system of ethics that actually devolves you and then tell you that it's good, because that's in accordance with their own morals, which they've like redefined however they want. And then they package it a certain way and then tell you a certain way that's on brand for them, but it's not on brand for people who have proper morals and ethics that are in harmony with source and in harmony with other groups. And so it gets very interesting when we can be above it and we can literally, there's friggin' nearly infinite, there's probably infinite different ethics. And when we can sit above them and look at them all and compare them and contrast them and see what they have in common, which I think is one of the great things, one of the great tools we can use as philosophers to find the harmonizing resonances and through lines between seemingly disparate systems, especially systems that have popped out. Everybody thinks like, well, you know, it's like different parts of the earth, different religions, different peoples, whatever, like, oh, well, I'll look at this and this and this. That's a good starting point, but it's also great to look throughout the timeline, because you can look at modern day stuff, medieval stuff, whatever, and all the way back to the beginning, even like hunter-gatherer stuff, right? Because then you can see how ethics how it facilitated evolution of different sample sizes of humans from hunter-gatherers, and you can see how their primitive, or whatever you want to call them, like formative ethics, like took them from hunter-gatherer to initial villages to whatever, and you can see how those interplayed with their environment, how it interplayed with neighbors with different ethics, and how they evolve. And then not only you get individuals, you get groups, and then you get groups and groups, and then you get the species. So you can ding, 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 and kind of go up the chain. And you can see almost essentially like what universally has worked for different groups ethics-wise, what hasn't worked, like what precepts here, what precepts there, you know, how did the ethics affect the societies at large, how do they affect the public institutions? How do they affect the private decision making? How do they affect the distribution of everything? How do they affect them interacting with other groups, be they countries or other people with other ethics, or how do powerful groups that are secular deal with powerful groups that are religious, and vice versa? How do those play out during time? How do they play out with all these different disparities? It's really fascinating. And when you kind of do that through time and space, you can alchemize it and get to a certain point where you go, okay, cool. We got enough data here on humanity and all of their articulated ethics and all of the results from all these different time eras and all these epochs or epochs. It's like really start getting into, okay, cool. You can start determining for yourself, oh, ethics are a naturally arising need for humanity, that's for sure. And then you can get into the particulars. You can start, okay, value systems, what works, what doesn't work. And you get that by seeing what works across time and space and culture and topography. And then you can start getting into these universal frequencies. When I say frequencies, it's, you hear radio wave or wave, but it's also just how often it occurs. Universal frequencies. Okay, how often, if these particular ethical precepts were put into play for 100 years in areas, like how frequently does it happen that they have an enlightenment, they have good things happen, they have explosive positive growth, they find harmony, they find peace, like frequencies, right? And then conversely, you can also find the frequencies in which these precepts, like, oh, well, this society, like these guys with these codes of ethics, they can only grow to a certain level. They always have famine, they always have complaints of wars, they always go to war, economies always collapse, like their citizens are always unhappy. They can only keep the society together if 1% of the people rule 99% and the 99% are super mad. Like, you can both become, clarity comes in, especially when we put them side by side with big data. Big data side by side makes things very clear, because they come together, and then in this little Venn diagram where they sort of overlap with like here and here, and then boom, you're getting some clarity. Well, I hope this is a good initial primer on ethics. Point of philosophy is to think for yourself, so you can like what I said or not like, doesn't really matter. Hopefully you found like useful meditation to get your own wheels turning, and I'm glad you got to come here and spend some time with me, John, at Philosopher's Corner, and I hope you have a good day.